Well, welcome back. We're talking about the relationship between China and Myanmar. The two countries have long been friends, and China hopes to provide support to the new Myanmar government. Still with me, San Yun, an expert in China's foreign policy. Priscilla Clapp is a former chief of mission with the U.S. Embassy in Myanmar. Sourabh Gupta is a geopolitical analyst focusing on Asia, and Victor Gar is a Chinese international relations expert. Thanks again to all of you. Yun, Chinese companies are the biggest foreign investors in Myanmar right now, but that investment is not without controversy. Some have accused China of using heavy-handed tactics with their investment, of not taking into account, as Priscilla pointed out earlier on, some of the issues that affect the people of Myanmar, things like environmental concerns, the mass upheaval of people. Will that change?
I think under the new NLD government, this trend is definitely going to change. Actually, the Chinese companies has faced a pretty steep learning curve in their lessons coming to overseas investment. And in Myanmar, this is an example where the Chinese companies have to learn their lessons as they go. So Chinese companies are still making the largest investments in Myanmar. Cumulatively, China occupies about 40% of the total FDI that the country has received. So in the future, with the One Belt, One Road initiative, China will do more. And the Chinese companies are certainly learning more about how to do corporate social responsibilities, how to engage the local community, how to navigate the relationship between the local government and the central government. So these are all lessons that the Chinese companies are learning, but the learning curve is probably going to take longer than we thought.
Priscilla, the construction of the dam that we talked about earlier on, that's been a source of enormous dispute between these two countries. They've tried to revise what the dam is going to do, what it's going to look like, etc. But people in that area still complain that their concerns were not taken into account, that people are going to have to move, that there would be flooding. They also point out that 90% of the electricity, which is going to be generated by a proposed hydroelectric plant, will go to China's Yunnan province.
The Myitsone Dam is a good example of bad Chinese investment because it's designed to serve China, not Myanmar. And that's what irks the Myanmar people. Not only the people, but the government. If China were interested in providing more energy to Myanmar, then they would also invest in the electricity grid. Because the reason they can't put more of the electricity into Myanmar from those big dams is because the grid won't take it. It needs to be rebuilt. And so China needs to think more holistically about the way they're investing in the country. A big dam like that doesn't do anything for Myanmar. In fact, it's being built on an earthquake fault line right at the beginning of the Irrawaddy River, which is the lifeline of the country. No environmental impact statement or assessment was done of the downriver impact of that dam, which is substantial, and I don't see how it could go forward.
Victor, as China begins to think, as Priscilla points out, more holistically in its relationship with Myanmar, how does its signature regional economic initiative, the One Belt, One Road plan, how does Myanmar fit into that?
Now, I would say that Myanmar needs to do many things on multiple fronts, almost at the same time. And you can either wait until everything is ready and then you do it in one stroke, which is almost impossible, or you come up with a gradualist approach. You start to do one thing at a time, but eventually it's all going to be integrated together for the overall benefit of the people in Myanmar. Talking about the relationship of either building the dam versus building up the grids, for example, it's very complicated. You cannot afford for the Myanmarese people to wait until everything is put into place at the same time magically. It's not possible. You have to do one project after another. Myanmar is suffering from a huge shortage of power. That's a reality. Therefore, all the investments throughout the world from all major countries should be very much welcomed into the energy investment in Myanmar. Infrastructure, too, is very much in bad shape. Roads, highways, railways, etc., airports, seaports, etc. And you need to do one project after another. there is no luxury in Myanmar so that people and the government can wait until magic falls from the heaven and everything is upgraded at the same time. Therefore, complaining about realities is one thing. You know, the taste of the pudding is in eating it. Eat the pudding in Myanmar and try to do the real investor in Myanmar and help the Myanmarese people to build up dams, build up power stations, and build a railway, build a highway, build a seaport, etc. This is more proactive approach. Don't complain. Don't point accusing finger at others. There are problems. Let's work out the problems together with the Myanmarese people and the Myanmarese government. But sitting on the couch and accusing all the other real investors in Myanmar is the wrong strategy.
Yun, you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can just say something about that. Well, the very important issue, like everyone has mentioned, is a view of the Myanmar people and what the people want. And if the people are saying no to some of the Chinese projects, then the Chinese investors and the Myanmar government must listen. Everyone recognizes, even in Myanmar, that economic development is important. But I think in the Myanmar society, there is also a value attached to their own environment, attached to their social heritage, attached to their values. And those values are not necessarily the same as the Chinese values. And when the Myanmar, for example, journalists and their scholars and their observers go to China, they do observe that the tremendous economic development that China has achieved in the past 30-something years. But on the other hand, they also see the other side of the picture. They see environmental pollution, they see the air pollution in Beijing, and they do ask themselves the question, do we want that? So yes, the Myanmar people, they do want economic development, but they don't necessarily want to take the same approach that China has taken.
So what's your view on that? I mean, the rules have changed right now, haven't they, because of the election? It's a balancing act now. The Myanmar government has to listen to its people. Chinese investors have to listen to what the Myanmar people want as well.
Yes, and it's got, I think, further compounded by the fact that some of these investments are in ethnic areas. For example, China's pipeline, and where it might have a free trade zone, is an area where the Arakanese are dominant. In the national election, the Arakanese party beat the National League for Democracy in that region, and so it becomes very complicated because you have the military out there, you have the NLD out there, you have the local, the few local governments who did, the few ethnic parties who did manage to show up and do well, and it becomes a very complicated path to navigate. And many of, as I said, the resources are in these ethnic areas, and so it's going to be a immensely difficult process. I think the Indians actually have also stumbled seriously in Arakan state, and so it's not going to be simple. The other ethnic area where the NLD did not get a majority, and in fact the one province, the one area where the USDP, the military aligned party, actually beat the NLD is in Shan State, which borders China, and so the NLD itself is hampered because it doesn't have some of those portfolios by way of which it could have control in those areas at the federal level. At the state level, it doesn't have those. It's an ethnic party governing, and this is going to be very complicated for any investor. And I think it is going to be difficult. And so there's going to need to be a lot of conversation at the ground level by the Chinese, and it's a difficult process. It will be a stop go process, but if you can be committed to it and you can do it transparently, I think it could be it can go forward.
Okay, Victor, I've got about a minute left. Broadly speaking, when we look at the future relationship between these two countries, is there a sense between Myanmar and China that they actually need each other?
Definitely, China and Myanmar will live together. We'll share our destiny together. As far as China is concerned, the more investment from all the other countries, including the United States, Japan, EU, you just name it, the better, because that will really help boost the infrastructure and connectivity in Myanmar. But if the United States want to outspend China and Myanmar, be my guest, do that. But the reality probably will not be that case. Therefore, I think Aung San Suu Kyi is doing the right thing to focus on Myanmar-Chinese relations, and I hope this will set a good example for all the other major countries to really care in substance, but not words or symbolism, about the matters in Myanmar which have a direct bearing on whether the livelihood of the people in Myanmar can be improved in the coming years.
All right, that's where we have to end it. Thanks to all of you for joining us.